I stood in the very center of the gleaming lobby of a financial high-rise in Chicago, where the crystal lights washed over the cold marble floor and the sharp clack of heels echoed in waves. It should have been the best morning of my life, my first day in the internship program at one of the most prestigious investment firms in America. But just as I stepped through the turnstile, clutching a worn leather bag, my mother's gift after saving for half a year, a cutting voice sliced the air in two. "Security! Get this girl out of here! She doesn't belong in this building!" The entire space fell dead silent. Employees in gray suits halted. Suspicious eyes drilled into me. The speaker was Mrs. Evelyn, the CEO's wife. She wore a pristine white fur coat, her gaze sweeping from my natural curls down to my second-hand shoes with chipped heels, then her lips tilted. That cold smile reminded me of all the times my mother had said, "You'll have to be twice as strong because this world has decided you start from a lower line." I froze, breathing, uneven, heart racing. The guard moved toward me, hand on his radio, awaiting orders. I heard a rustle of whispers from strangers. "She must be in the wrong place. Looks more like cleaning staff than an intern." Heat rushed to my face, but I did not bow my head. In Mrs. Evelyn's eyes, I saw not only contempt for a young woman who hadn't yet earned her place, but a prejudice carved deep across generations. People like me could never be worthy of stepping in here. And then right at that moment, the revolving door behind me eased open. The steady tap of a cane rang with firm rhythm on the stone. Every gaze turned in unison. A silver-haired man in a perfectly tailored suit entered with an air of authority. Luther Graham, chairman of the board, a Wall Street legend and the most powerful black man in American finance. He stopped beside me, gently placed a hand on my shoulder and smiled. "She belongs here more than anyone else in this building." The air exploded. The lobby was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. That reversal had only just begun. Before I tell you this entire story, one of humiliation, of scrutinizing stares, and of how a young black woman stood tall in a place everyone assumed she would bow, I want you to do one small thing for me. Hit subscribe and like this video if you've ever even once in your life been underestimated because of your appearance, your circumstances, or your skin color. And tell me, where are you listening from? Leave a comment with the city and country where you're hearing this story. Because believe me, empathy has no borders. What I'm about to share with you could happen in Chicago, in New York, or right in the small town where you grew up. You might be wondering, is it worth spending time listening to a girl recount an embarrassing morning? I promise you its ending will keep you glued to the screen, because this isn't just a personal tale. It's a mirror held up to a society where prejudice still exists, where silence can murder self-respect, and where courage can change an entire life. Have you ever asked yourself why, when we achieve something, there's always someone waiting on the sidelines to cut us down? Have you ever heard someone snicker at your voice, your hair, or the clothes on your back? If yes, you'll see yourself in every line I'm about to tell. And if not, listen closely, because this story may change the way you look at that gaze of disdain you witness in the very room where you're standing. So don't leave. Stay to the end to witness the moment when an accusation that seemed destined to destroy a future became the turning point that changed everything. Trust me, you'll want to know what made an entire lobby full of powerful people go silent. To understand why that one moment when Mr. Luther's hand rested on my shoulder made my eyes brim with tears, you need to know the road that brought me here. I was born on the south side of Chicago, in a neighborhood where ambulance sirens and gunshots sometimes wrestled each other in the night. My mother, a night shift nurse, often came home when dawn had already painted a pink hue over peeling walls. My father left when I was 8. From that day, my mother became both parents, raising 2 daughters with calloused hands and exhausted steps. I can't forget her by the stove reheating soup while nodding off after a 12-hour shift. Most of my clothes came from charity shops. My textbooks were blurry photocopies. But there was one thing my mother never let me lack: the conviction that I could go farther than that struggling neighborhood. You have a mind. You have bright eyes. Don't let anyone make you forget that she'd say whenever I buried my face and cried because classmates mocked my bag with its frayed strap. I studied in the library more than at home. I worked at the corner coffee shop scrubbing cups until blisters formed, saving every dollar for college application fees. Whenever I was tired, I looked at my grandmother's photo. The woman I never met but heard had beaten racism in the 1960s to become one of the first Black nurses at the local hospital. When the acceptance letter from Columbia University arrived, my mother held me and cried all night. I was the first in my family to step into an Ivy League school. In New York, I studied day and night, competing fiercely with students from families of lawyers, politicians, and Forbes-listed business people. They had private tutors and investors at the dinner table. I had an old computer my mother bought at a pawn shop and a resolve that wouldn't budge. I knew that someday I would step into a world many believed I didn't belong to. And that morning, in front of the doors of Graham & Co., I believed my family's dream had finally taken shape. I didn't yet know that only seconds later, prejudice would test it all. That morning, Graham & Company's main lobby felt like a stage. Light beamed down from the soaring glass ceiling, glinting off Armani suits and polished leather shoes. I had just reached the reception desk, hands trembling as I set down the intern badge HR had sent, when Mrs. Evelyn, the CEO's wife, strode straight toward me. A trace of Chanel No. 5 drifted in the air. Her eyes swept over me as if inspecting an out-of-season item in a luxury store. "Whose child is this?" she asked in a syrupy voice saturated with disdain. Without waiting for an answer, she glanced around at the staff. "This is a financial institution, not a shelter." Giggles burst from 2 young assistants behind her. I could feel every gaze aimed at me, half pity, half scorn. I inhaled, forcing a smile. "Excuse me, I'm the new intern. This is the badge HR sent me." "But Mrs. Evelyn narrowed her eyes and tapped crimson nails on the glass counter. "Intern. In that dress?" "My dear, this isn't the housekeeping department. Security." A burly guard moved in. A murmur rippled across the lobby, whispers like thorns. "She's probably lost. Looks more like a courier than an analyst." My heart pounded. All my effort, the nights spent awake in the library, my mother's sacrifices, everything felt trampled under that sneer. The guard hesitated, perhaps seeing the badge in my hand. But Mrs. Evelyn raised her voice, echoing through the hall. "Get her out before she embarrasses us in front of clients." Every head turned. I felt exposed before the public, every tiny flaw magnified 1,000 times because of my skin, my second-hand shoes, the old bag my mother had scrimped for half a year to buy. In that moment, I wanted to disappear. But another part of me, the part raised through dark South Side nights, the part that promised my mother I would never bow to prejudice, kept me standing. I gripped my bag strap, looked straight into Mrs. Evelyn's eyes. My voice shook but held steady. "I have the right to be here, and one day you will have to acknowledge that." No one laughed anymore. Silence blanketed the room, heavy and suffocating. Right then, the revolving door sounded behind us. The revolving door whirred, and every gaze snapped toward the advancing figure. A tall man, silver hair bright under the light's cane, striking a steady beat against the marble. The lobby lost its air. People whispered, It's him, Chairman Graham. Luther Graham, Wall Street legend, chairman of the board, the man who forged Graham and Company into a financial empire. Known not only for brilliance, but for his story, a black boy denied an internship in 1968 for not fitting the company culture, now seated in the most powerful chair. He stopped right in front of me, his sharp gaze sweeping the crowd before settling on Mrs. Evelyn. A flicker of a smile touched his lips, not amusement, but the kind of smile that knows exactly who has just shown their true face. "Evelyn," he said, voice warm but decisive. "She belongs here more than anyone else in this building." The words cut the air like a blade. Mrs. Evelyn froze, fingers clenched around her glittering clutch. The employees who had giggled dropped their eyes to the floor. The guard halted awkwardly, stepping back. Mr. Luther turned to me, his hand resting lightly on my shoulder, firm and warm. "I recruited her myself. This young woman is not just an intern. She is the recipient of the Graham Fellowship, the first in her family to attend Columbia, graduating top of her class. She's here because she earned it. Every late night, every sacrifice. She's here because she represents exactly what this company should stand for." I looked up, eyes blurring. In that instant, all humiliation transformed into pride. My mother's sacrifices, my white-knuckle study nights, the dishwashing shifts that blistered my hands, all of it felt validated before the very eyes that had doubted me. Whispers spread across the lobby, but this time they were different: admiration, surprise, and shame. I felt the air change as if a door long sealed had just cracked open. But the story didn't end there, because right after that declaration, Mr. Luther decided to turn this moment into a public lesson on dignity and justice. Mr. Luther gave my shoulder a gentle squeeze, then slowly turned to face Mrs. Evelyn. Everyone held their breath. Even the usual keyboard clatter from the front desk staff went still. "Evelyn," he said, his deep voice resonating through the lobby. On my first day here more than half a century ago, security asked me to leave too. They said I didn't fit. I stood right here wearing my father's old suit, mocked, as if I had wandered into a place where I did not belong. Today I see history nearly repeat itself, but this time I will not allow it. A rustle went up. Faces usually composed now showed clear discomfort. Mrs. Evelyn, long accustomed to being treated like the company's queen, faltered, cheeks flushing red. "She is not here to clean," he continued, voice gathering force. "She is here to build with us. And if anyone in this room believes clothing or social status determines a person's worth, then that person does not deserve to wear the Graham & Co. logo." Applause broke out, tentative at first, then swelling. Staff around me nodded. A few even stood. I saw phones lifting, capturing every word. Social media would not miss this moment. Mrs. Evelyn stammered, I only thought... But Mr. Luther raised a hand to stop her. "No, Evelyn. We all saw clearly. What you think matters less than the message you just broadcast across this lobby. Prejudice, contempt, there is no place for them here." I stood there, heart thudding, trembling yet relieved. This wasn't merely a defense of me. It was a verdict against all the prejudice I had carried on my back. Silence fell again, then burst into thunderous applause. I had not merely been allowed to stay. I had just witnessed justice speak right where it rarely shows itself. When the applause faded, I stood rooted to the marble, my heart filled with a feeling both new and familiar: self-respect. I used to think that if I worked hard enough, if my achievements shone brightly enough, prejudice would disappear. But now I realized sometimes prejudice doesn't disappear. It waits for its moment to show itself. And when it does, the question isn't, "Why me?" but "How will I face it?" Mr. Luther leaned slightly and whispered, "What you did today won't just change your life. It will open a path for those who come after. Don't ever forget." I nodded, feeling the weight of his words. Because this moment wasn't just about me, a trembling intern with an old bag. It was about every Black child cramped in a small library, dreaming of stepping into gilded rooms while knowing they'll be examined detail by detail. I thought of my mother. How I wished she could see this to know that every night shift, every coin saved had hardened into a truth no one could deny her daughter deserves to be anywhere. People in that lobby would recount the moment in different ways. For some, it was a minor incident. For others, a lesson in arrogance and consequence. But for me, it was a declaration. Your worth is not determined by the narrowness of someone else's gaze. I left that lobby not only with an intern badge, but with a carved-in reminder every time I walk into a room, I don't walk in for myself alone. I walk in for my mother, for my grandmother, for those pushed away from seats that were always theirs. And I walk in for you, anyone listening to this story, who has been made to feel not good enough. If you followed me this far, you've likely felt that this story isn't just one morning of my life. It's a reminder for all of us, you don't need anyone's permission to exist in this world. Your presence, your effort, your intelligence, and your dignity, all of it is enough to hold you upright even when an entire room tries to bend you down. I want you to do something for yourself right now. Remember a time when you were looked down on, misjudged, or excluded because of your background, your skin, or your appearance. Then ask, how did you stand back up? If my story stirs even a flicker of strength in you, share it so that someone out there, a boy, a girl, or a single mother, can find the encouragement they desperately need. Hit like if you believe justice should never be a privilege but a basic right. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next, where I'll keep sharing journeys from humiliation to pride, from injustice to triumph. And most importantly, comment below. Tell me about the moment you proved to the world they were wrong about you. I promise I'll read every line because your story matters just as much as mine. And if today you feel small or lost in some room, remember this image: a girl with a worn strap bag mistaken for the cleaning staff, then feeling the chairman's hand on her shoulder as he says, "She belongs here." Who knows? Tomorrow it might be you walking in and changing the entire room.